What's good, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, part, of course, of the Cover One Sports Network. I'm one of your two hosts this evening, Anthony Prohaska, joined by Eric Turner. Eric,
Mhm.
it's much more fun to do the film
It's
room
so much better.
after a win. It's also less time consuming because, as we've talked about
Yes.
before, when the Bills lose, we dive in harder to really try and problem solve and identify, problems and then potential solutions. So, a little bit of a lighter load. When I say lighter, it saved us like a half an hour instead of like a 3 hour dive. It's
Right,
a half
right.
hour dive. But it's also a little more joyful. Bills lost two in a row in, I don't want to say heartbreaking fashion, but a pretty disheartening loss to Minnesota after a loss against a division rival that we all thought the Bills should have beaten. And I think we all thought the Bills should have beaten the Minnesota Vikings as well. And they
Mhm.
had that game in hand. But regardless of that, the Bills come out, they identify some things, they change some things up on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. We're going to get into both of those things tonight. And it's fun to just do it after a win. And here
Yeah.
we sit on a holiday week after the Bills beat the Cleveland Browns in Detroit on the week of a snowstorm.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of weeks, especially as you said, when we talk about film, talk about analysis and evaluation. Appreciate you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, it was nice to get off the snide there and kind of get a dub back in the win column.
Yeah.
And yes, it was versus against a team that was meh, but it doesn't matter. This team has been having struggles of their own, so it was good to just get a win back in the win column, have the team experience that. And this one was a little different too, because this was a lot of adversity leading into this game with the snowstorm, unusual scheduling and unknown scheduling when you talk about what they were dealing with in Buffalo and that snowstorm coming as the week kind of progressed and having to move the game to Detroit. So there was a lot of adversity, mentally with the losses that were stacked up. And then again, when it came to routine and scheduling, you heard Diggs talk about it today where even though it's a short week, he said, I can still plan some things. And he's a big guy of taking care of his body and during the week off the field. And he's like, I can at least schedule that now. Like last week, he couldn't do that. So these guys are, routine based players and people. And that those routines, a lot of that stuff is off the field and taking care of their bodies. And you talk about a short week from a game Sunday to Thursday, but last week was just another animal. And I think that, Anthony, like my overall thoughts from it, I think that affected the game plan from Dorsey. I think that scheduling, the snowstorm, I think early in the week they were assuming, and they had to, because early in the week they were playing this game in Buffalo, right? So early in the week, they're like, you know what? We're playing against a team that obviously struggles to stop the run. And they're playing expecting the weather to be bad. And so I think they went into the week game planning and scheduling their week in that manner when it came to their game plan. And then once it was moved, it was like, you know what? It's too late to just open things up, right? It's too late to just open things up and go passing. So they stuck to that plan, and they believed they could win with that plan, obviously. And, there were moments early on that it was a struggle, but there were moments where things started to get on track. That blood was flowing, that adrenaline was flowing, and they got on track and began to put up some points.
I think that's a great point with the unexpected nature of the week, right? Especially in juxtaposition with like a short week this week of playing on a Thursday. And I feel like most people would think like, well, it's harder to deal with the short week, but it at least within that short week, everything is a known quantity. Granted, it's a short week, but you know what's happening on Monday and on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you go into your game Thursday. Last week was all like, am I getting into the shallow end? No. Am I getting into the deep end? Do I put a toe? Do I put a foot? Should I not get in the pool at all? Like just all these unknown variables and unknown quantities. And then you package it together with guys that were missing from an injury perspective. And then, coupling it together with the game plan. I think that's a tremendous point. You saw and we've got some numbers, of course, to back this up, in addition to the film that we'll get into on tonight's episode. But you saw a shift in personnel usage for the Buffalo Bills on offense. You saw, I don't want to say a change in identity, but almost a different shift in philosophy, which again, even though the weather ended up not being a factor for the game because they were in a dome, but it made sense given the Browns' struggles from a run defensive perspective all year. They were 32nd in DVOA from a run defense perspective coming in, and it was just game after game. you could watch and they were just getting gouged left and right. Part of it is because they're a smaller linebacking group. Like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is fantastic, but he often tries to shoot backside. He'll take himself out of the play, and he's a risk reward kind of guy. They're not the most stout on the interior.
He's like Milano on steroids. Like, this dude can make the splashiest plays, but then he can also just totally take himself out of a play. And you're going to see some of those plays, but he's still so much fun to watch. He literally, his variance is probably some of the highest in the league, right?
Yeah. He's like this big home run hitter that like he's either hitting the moonshot or he's striking out and he's swinging through each pitch, and it's going to be a 0-2 and then a strikeout and you're done. He's only seeing 3 pitches, but that's the risk reward that he runs. And when you package that kind of play at the second level with their spottiness on the interior, and then coupled with their ability, or not ability, but their by design, who they are from a defensive perspective and what they do on the back end and how they show more too high looks, like you're putting a lot on that front. They have not stepped up and executed how they needed to. So it made sense to come into this game and run the ball, whether being an issue or not. But again, I think to your point, like you're installing in the beginning of the week thinking like, okay, we're playing in Buffalo. There's going to be some weather issues. Let's go with this game plan. And by the time it's like, nope, we're playing in a dome. It's like, well, we can't really pull the plug on this.
And think about this. Again, they're coming up with the structure of their game plan early in the week, and then the install usually happens midweek or so. But that's when the storm, like mid to late in the week, began to hit. And so then the discussions of moving the game occurred. That's usually when they're actually doing the walkthroughs, the install of that game plan. So they couldn't do any of that. All of that was done with Zoom. They had a short, a couple practices, maybe a practice and a half. RJ makes a good point that they're actually going to have probably more practices on the short week than they did last week. But even with that said, let's take away the Browns game. On this short of a week, normally, Dorsey talked about it today, normally you can only do so much game plan, team specific stuff on a short week. Like you can only study so many things on a short week. And so a lot of the times it's like, okay, we're comfortable with these 4 concepts versus any defense. We know how to run. This is what we hang our hat on, which I don't think they quite have that, that in their arsenal yet, but they can go into the week and say, okay, this is what everyone's comfortable from top to bottom running. These are the concepts. These are the pass concepts, and then just go with that, and we'll deal with whoever we're facing Thursday. The team specific game planning is very tough to do on a short week. Now, the scouting staff likely got started on that Thursday and Friday of last week when it came to Detroit film. But either way, when you're talking, kind of outlining that game plan and then installing it on a short week is very difficult. So a lot of times they're just going to, we're going to hang our hat on these concepts. We'll deal with the issues that we face in the game on the field.
And I think that's also part of why it's such like a running joke usually of how ugly the Thursday night football games are in the NFL. That's a huge part of it. Like the game planning piece for that specific opponent, there's only so much you can do. So a lot of times teams are just going into their bag of their staple core items on both sides of the ball and playing what they know they can hang their hat on. And if it works, cool. If not, it doesn't. And then you couple that with, short week of rest and everything, and it leads to some of that choppiness and that messiness coming into the game. Yeah, as Kevin there says, Allen said they totally
and
the game plan.
Let's get into Allen, because I got into it all day on social media, unfortunately, but I had some time today. It's obvious, like he struggled. We saw it on the broadcast, but it was even worse once you turned on the film, especially the first few drives where they went 3 and out. It's safe to say that yes, Allen's elbow is a hindrance. It is. It's an issue, but when you watch him throw the last couple weeks, he still will let it rip when he needs to. In this game early on, first quarter into the second quarter, the elbow wasn't the issue. He literally just wasn't trusting his eyes, and he played it safe, and that's okay. Again, considering the game plan that they had in place with the run heavy game plan, the shot calls, like it was okay for him to play safe. I'm not criticizing that, but I'm also not going to ignore it. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Like you got to point it out. Like he has a high-low on several occasions. First play of the game, fourth play of the game, where he had Diggs on 2 shots down the field that he could easily make the throw, and he didn't take it. He took the check down, and that's okay. But you can't ignore it, and you cannot cop out and say it's because of the elbow. I'm sorry. He struggled. Conservative was fine with me, again, because he eventually got on track. The game plan started working with the run game. And most importantly, he didn't have any turnovers. He didn't have any turnover-worthy plays. And that is what the staff is wanting him to learn from the last few games. Because when he's put the ball in danger, the Bills have lost. He's cost them games. This game, he didn't. So playing it safe was okay by me early on. Get your feet wet, get your feet under you, and take what they're giving you. It's okay not to go for the throw on the fourth play of the game. But let's not cop out and say it was the elbow, guys.
No, and I could see from the standpoint of, if you think the elbow, again, I can understand if people are thinking like, well, he's not trusting, he doesn't trust the arm, or it's in his head and it's kind of affecting him. But the reason they're swinging the pendulum towards the other side, we've seen this before with Josh Allen. We saw it a couple years ago when he had those turnover streak games where, oh, hey, appreciate you. Thank you very much. That's pretty cool. We have a tremendous staff, so that's a huge compliment.
Yeah, thank you.
We saw it in 2019. He has that stretch of turnover games. And what did we start seeing him? We didn't see him kind of restrain where he was throwing, but we saw when he would take deep shots, he would put it so far out in front of his receivers that it was either going to be them or it was nobody. And usually it was nobody.
It was usually 10 to 15 yards too far.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
He was playing it so safe. He was like, I'm just going to chuck it. And if my guy can make a play, cool. Right. If not, oh, well, it's just an incompletion. We've seen him go through these stretches where he's had some rough performances from a turnover standpoint and a decision-making standpoint, and he reins himself back in by responding. I don't want to say by being ultra conservative, but by being pretty conservative. And you hit it the very first play of the game, the check down to Singletary. Diggs is clearing on a dig route, and it's not a contested throw. The middle of the field is wide open.
Single high look. Yes. It's a dig route. It's perfect.
Everything you want. And I always think it's funny anytime Diggs runs a dig. It just gets me every time. But it's wide open. And Allen literally looks at it and then checks down and comes to Singletary. And this is throughout the entire first half too. There's that potential hole shot to Diggs that he checks down to Knox, where Diggs is running the corner route. Allen literally looks at it and he cocks it.
He sets the throw.
Yes. And it wasn't, at first I thought, it was a pump, and it wasn't. You can literally see him go, better not. And he dumps it down to Knox. And
he did it later in the game too on a post to Gabriel Davis, who was covered. It was a smart decision. It was 2nd and 3.
The one where he literally reloads it.
Yeah, he reloaded and then he shot it to Knox in the flats. And that's why Knox got going. He was that low option, that check down security blanket on a lot of these, shots down the field. And again, we're okay with that because, he bypassed Diggs on that dig route early in the game. He came back to it with Gabriel Davis off play action, and then they got another 15 yards for that hit. So he eventually hit some of the routes he, saw in the first half and then kind of bypassed them, and he played it safe. And I'm okay with that. But again, as you said, it happened a few years ago, and it's almost like you need a reset. You need to recite. He's a gunslinger. You're not going to coach that out of him. A lot of the comments I got were, "Oh, we don't want to coach that out of him." You're not going to coach that out of him. That's his DNA. There are times where he just needs to. As McDermott alluded to, he doesn't need to be Superman. He doesn't have to go deep all the time. He doesn't have to make the big play every time. And those check downs and throws to Knox underneath and the check down to Singletary, those type of plays are needed for Josh Allen mentally so that he can get that muscle memory back. Because again, he's been on a freaking tear since the last playoffs. So you can understand why his ego and confidence is so high, and the last few games have really hit him hard from the shoulders up. So I was okay with the struggles. Again, they got on track with the game plan, and everything, fell into place. And he went on a nice tear. I know the numbers yardage wise aren't crazy high, but went
it was really because of that first quarter and a half.
Right.
Yeah. Once we got to the 2-minute warning of the second quarter through the rest of the game, it was a different kind of Josh Allen.
Right. And so let's talk about his main weapon, because part of the reason why Allen struggled early was because he was, as you said, bypassing Diggs on some really open throws and explosive throws. And so when the broadcast team and they pan to McDermott and Diggs having that conversation, I think it was James Lofton that said, "Hey, Diggs is frustrated." And we assume that. And after he said that, I'm like, maybe. But then when you watch the film, it kind of validated it, because, of course, Diggs is like, what the heck? And there were some plays where Josh Allen work the left side of the field when Diggs was on the right side. It's a too high look. The two high beaters on this side to Diggs' side. He's not even looking over there, and Diggs is running an under route, and he's wide open. And Josh is not even looking over there. So his eyes were in the wrong place. And so I do believe Diggs was frustrated, and I do believe that McDermott, kind of reeled him in, and you could see that you pointed it out on Twitter, like you could see him just like, you're right, coach, and just let it go, right?
It was awesome to see, and I think I want to say this too because I know Diggs has diva things from his time in Minnesota, right? We've never seen him get frustrated like this in Buffalo, and I think part of the reason it was in this game was because not only was he not getting those looks when he was open, but it was because the offense was struggling. So he was sitting there going like, yo, I'm winning. I can do something to help. Like, what the hell is going on? And I've never been in the fire Sean McDermott camp. I know there are some that are vehemently in that camp, and I've never been there, but I recognize some of the shortcomings that he's had from a decision-making standpoint, or even from an X's and O's standpoint. You and I are very much X's and O's, scheme and structure, whiteboard work, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that he's not capable in those areas, but there is something to be said for a coach that can connect with his players on that level, and not just like the second stringers and third stringers. Stephon Diggs is a true alpha number one wide receiver in the NFL, and alpha player in general. He's one of the best players at his position, one of the best players in the entire NFL. And he's had a history of being volatile, and he's tremendous. And you just see in that moment the connection. I love that you pointed it out, like what I said on Twitter. Like, you watch him, literally, he goes like this. He untenses, his shoulders relax, and the big thing, he puts his chin right into Sean McDermott's shoulder, almost like a frustrated son with their dad. And you just see that level of comfort and that connection. And then, whether it was on purpose or not, next drive, touchdown to Stephon Diggs. And I'm not saying it was because of that, and I don't think you would either, but you just start to get some things flowing in the right direction. X's and O's are always going to be important. Scheme and structure are always important. We are huge proponents of that. But that connection piece and leadership piece from Sean McDermott was really, really a tremendous thing to see. And I think it's an example of why he's so respected by the players and the staff, again, from everybody from the top all the way to bottom.
And across the league. Across the league. Like
100% across the league.
Totally a respectable coach and a respectable human. And like you said, Diggs is an alpha. Diggs is a star receiver. He's a guy in that moment that is actually correct. He was right. We saw it on film, as we talked about. And, for McDermott to be able to center Diggs like that. And of course, you got to give credit to Diggs too, as you said, because he's had maturity issues in the past, but he's learned from it. And it was important, guys. I think it was very important, not just for Diggs, but the team as well. And I think that's why McDermott handled it the way he did, because he knew that if Diggs was just, throwing a hissy fit and being frustrated and visibly showing that, and, giving it to Josh Allen on the sideline, it was only going to make things worse, because Josh, we saw it's already in his head, right? He's already in his own head. And so you can't add fuel to the fire with that. And it could be very volatile. And Kevin says, you can tell they respect McDermott, which is important. Yes. I mean, he's built a fantastic foundation and reputation around the league. And for Diggs to actually center himself after that is a testament to the trust and respect that, Diggs has for McDermott. So with that said, I think that's one of those moments, man. Like, you're going to look back years from now when we're watching a different Bills team, a different Bills regime. And you're like, man, the coaching staff, the front office, like that's one of those like memorable moments that I'll always remember. Even in a game that really, in the grand scheme of things, didn't matter, but that's the type of coach you want. Like, that's exactly it. It was one of those moments, like epitome of Sean McDermott moments. It will be in his tenure, regardless of what happens, from here on out. But we want to talk a little more about the offense and how they kind of did a little change up. Before the show, you kind of brought up some of the personnel grouping stats. Why don't you holler at the people and let them know typically what their tendency is prior to coming into this game?
So the Buffalo Bills, and it's been this way for the past several years under Brian Daboll, and it's continued under Ken Dorsey. We know their propensity to run 11 personnel. For those who don't know, that means 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Going into this past week against the Cleveland Browns, the Buffalo Bills were in 11 personnel 75% of the time. And Eric, so if they're in 11 personnel 75% of the time, that means all the other personnel groupings, they're in 25% of the time.
Total, yep.
Total. But Maybe was there like a different percentage for those non-11 personnel groupings in this Browns game?
Yeah, and so in this game, again, we talked about the game plan, how, going into the week, they had to probably change some things with the weather and the team they were playing.
Yep.
So 11 personnel in this game alone was at 46.1%. Our man Adam looked some of these stats up.
That's almost a
Based
30.
on
That's
yeah,
almost a full 30 percentage point drop. That
right.
is huge.
Yeah, and so 53.8% of their snaps were outside of 11 personnel. So 10.7% were in 12 personnel. So one running back, two tight ends. 23% they were in 21 personnel. We're going to talk about this because 21 personnel, it's two running backs, one tight end. Usually you assume it's Gilliam, but no, the Bills had some cool personnel groupings that when we talk about positionless football, I think this is where they need to tinker with going forward this year. So 23%, two running backs, one tight end. 7.6% they were in 22. So two running backs, two tight ends. And then they added an extra offensive lineman and Bobby Hart on several plays. 12.3% they were in jumbo overall. So it was a different game plan. And we saw it on a lot of these runs, and we saw it in some of the passes. They, actually, brought in some of those heavier personnel groupings and threw some passes. So I think that was an interesting thing. And it's something the Bills, again, we always reference the second half of last year, the back third of last year, how they change up some things, when we're talking personnel groupings and how they were approaching running the ball. This very much resembled that type of shift. It was quite drastic.
Yeah, again, roughly a 30 percentage point drop is a huge change. 28, percent and some change to be specific. That's a huge change. And we got to stop because we got a super chat.
Imani.
Oh man, and Eric with the same spelling for the first name. So we of course had to bring that up. Thank you very much, Eric. One for being here, and then two for the generosity and the kindness. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you, and happy Thanksgiving to no one else because you guys didn't donate. Just kidding. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Yeah, that's a drastic shift, but again, it made sense, right? If you're anticipating the weather being an issue towards skewing your game plan to not being able to pass the ball, you're going to use less 11 personnel. Combined with the fact, again, what we ID'd, the Cleveland Browns have been a horrible run defense all year from a schematic perspective, from an advanced metric perspective, what you see on tape. And this was a game that if you wanted to see the Buffalo Bills start to take advantage of some things and, you're not proving your mettle against a poor run defense like that, but sometimes you want to just get it going. It's like when Alabama schedules their opening game to be against like Chattanooga or somebody, and they beat them like 75-0. It's like, okay, let's just get things lubricated. Let's get ready a little bit. But what was also nice to see in this game, Eric, is we've seen a lot from the Buffalo Bills running backs this year, particularly Devin Singletary. They usually are able to just get what is blocked. Like if it's blocked for 4 yards, they'll get it. If anybody was watching the Monday night game last night, there was a great line from Aikman about Christian McCaffrey, where if it's blocked for 4 to 6 yards, he's going to get you 8 to 10 or more. The Bills haven't had that with their running backs traditionally this year, but this past game against the Cleveland Browns, and this isn't just due to the poor nature of the Cleveland Browns run defense, we saw the running backs, both James Cook and Devin Singletary, getting more than what was expected, getting more than what was available. And it was a huge part of why the Bills run game was successful.
Yeah. And you can see it, as Anthony said, basically James Cook was getting 2.95 yards per attempt over what a normal average running back would get in that situation. And even Devin Singletary was up there as well. And overall on the season, Singletary is actually one of the worst when it comes to this. So yes, it was a game against the Browns and their struggling rush defense. But the thing is those heavy personnel groupings and a lot of those formations where they're having everyone in, and you're seeing the Bills get the ball on the perimeter to Cook and Singletary on pin and pulls and pitch outs. Like, you're still condensing formations and you're getting bigger guys in the box and you're adding more to the box. As you can see, eight plus guys in the box or more. The Bills were up there. Singletary, 50% of his rushes were against 8-man boxes. James Cook, 45.45. So yes, it was against the Browns, but I still find value in these situations where you have a heavier personnel grouping, you have heavy formations, you're showing run, you're still running, and you're still able to gain that many more yards over what is expected given that situation. So that's where I find the value. Is that something they can duplicate every week? Probably not, but it's a starting point, and it's a starting point that this offense needs as a complement to Josh Allen.
Oh, 1,000%. And what's something that we talked about all last year, and it was something that Mitch Morse himself validated when he sat down in the film room with us last year. The Bills weren't able to take advantage of light boxes. And I'm just using this as one particular example.
Right.
The Bills would have every opportunity to run because defenses were like, cool, we don't respect it. And they would just give you 6-man boxes, sometimes 5-man boxes. And what would the Bills get? 3 yards, maybe 4 yards, which is terrible against a 5 and a 6-man box. So any semblance of traction, any semblance of success is positive for this Buffalo Bills running game, especially given where it's come from and the journey that it's been on this year. But again, to your point, Eric, it's how they were winning, right? And that's the big thing with what we analyze and what we break down. The loss and the win or the win, both of those are tremendously important, but it's how you lose. It's how you win that point to the sustainability for continued losses or continued wins going in the future. And there were several positives to pick from when it came to the Buffalo Bills running game this year in terms of schematics, in terms of design and execution from the offensive line and the running backs as well, like we spoke about, that give you, hope for what this running game can be going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is all being said with the lack of practice and reps.
Yes.
and hitting each other and feeling, what it takes to have a successful run game because of the lack of practice. This is not their fastball. Yeah. This is not something they practice a lot of, period. So it was them dominating, and they dominated up front on both sides of the line. That's what we're going to be covering tonight. Yeah. So that was impressive to me. But let's talk about the 1-2 punch, and Hines hopefully eventually does come into the picture here as he learns the offense a little more. But the 1-2 punch of Singletary and Cook, man, what were your thoughts on some of the inside-out combination, speed, power, elusiveness that they're offering in the run game in this scheme?
I liked it. And it's not to the point where each of them are siloed in terms of their usage between Cook and Singletary to the point that it's a tendency, tip to the defense. But what you saw from Devin Singletary this past week was more rushes in between the tackles. His rush chart on Next Gen is pretty much everything is between the hashes and in between the tackles. That's where he was doing his work. And then you look at what James Cook was doing, some of the things that we've loved this year. The Bills have done it with Singletary to a degree, but we saw those crack tosses and those tosses to get to the perimeter, to get to the outside. James Cook would also be used in some inside runs to, slash and gash the Browns, but we saw them leaning into both of their skill sets. Devin Singletary's ability to make a guy miss in the phone booth within the box. And, got to stop.
This is a good question. Silas asks, is the run game success against the Browns sustainable against the Lions? They just bottled up Barkley in the Giants rushing attack. I like winning. I like winning without depending on Josh to be great. What are your thoughts on that?
So I literally just came off of watching about 50 minutes of the the Lions defensive performance against the Giants. Also, for those of you who want to track, so I spent about 50 minutes on it, and I only got through like 15 minutes of the 45 minutes of game tape. But what you're going to get from the Detroit Lions is, and it's not, this is where the identity and personality of a coach comes into play for a team. The Detroit Lions defense is a reflection of Dan Campbell. They're going to play about 30% man coverage, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's higher from a rank standpoint. They're going to blitz about 33% of the time, which is 6th most in the league. They're going to play a lot of single high coverages. They are going to put 7 and 8 defenders in the box. They are aggressive. They will penetrate. They will beat you up.
So what you're saying is that the Bills match up quite well, because you can, you're talking Giants versus Bills offensive personnel, like Daniel Jones, obviously not Josh Allen. The receivers they have none. They have no tight ends. They don't have the weapons the Bills do. So I don't think they can sell out to stop the run.
Exactly.
And they definitely can't load the box like they want to, like they did. They can't play the man coverage that they want. I think they're a scrappy team. I just don't think you can put these two teams side by side and say, hey, they're going to try a similar game plan, because I don't think that's not doable when you have Josh Allen and the weapons outside.
No. And I think, again, exactly to your point, what the Lions were able to do was because, no disrespect, like the Giants' weaponry on the outside isn't what the Bills have. They don't have a Stephon Diggs. They don't even have a Gabriel Davis. So if the Lions are going to come and stack that box, and to really answer, Silas, your question, like, is the run game success against the Browns sustainable? I think it'll be a tougher challenge to run against the Lions, but I also think the Bills will have a more advantageous position to attack the outside and the perimeter, because they can't handle the Buffalo Bills receivers.
I don't think it'll be quite as much a focus either.
Exactly. That's
because, again, they're going to go back to their normal identity. And again, because last week was a different different animal with everything that went on, and who they played all at once actually was kind of perfect in that
I would say
sense.
game plan specific
Yeah.
combined with weather stuff. It all
Yeah,
skewed to run the ball.
perfectly. But now that they know they're playing in the dome against a team like that, they're just, I don't think they're gonna have the same approach.
Yeah.
But
And
can
you
they
want to
have
use
the
that
same?
aggressiveness
Sure,
against them. Play action
right.
passes, get Josh on the move, run crossers. If they want to play single high, cool. You'll get gouged and get beat up the seams or on crossers all day.
And you just can't play man consistently against Josh Allen. You just can't.
Right.
So I think it's gonna be a little different. But from a run game perspective, I liked the Cook Singletary 1-2 punch because, as you said, you had Singletary bouncing around inside, got him off tackle. And the Bills aren't a team that is they're not going to move people up the middle, right? They're not going to move people vertically. And so it's one of those things where, like, hey, they want to get the ball off tackle. They want to get the ball outside. And they're going to do some non-traditional things. Like, not many teams can pull their center like Mitch Morse can. Not many teams can pull tackles from both sides like the Bills can. So they're doing some different things where we're not going to be able to move you vertically and displace you vertically up the middle. We're going to try to outflank you off tackle, outflank you off outside. And so I like that little 1-2 punch of a Motor, Singletary, and James Cook because, you can have Motor breaking slashing inside, breaking some of those tackles, keeping them honest up the middle, against those light boxes. And then when they start to pinch a little bit, then you're getting outside with Cook, and the Bills are one of the top teams attempt-wise in getting on the perimeter on those pitches and tosses. And I think that's a nice 1-2 punch for the Bills offense when it comes to the run game. It's something that, again, they're going to need as a complement. But I just thought Motor was decisive. He ran very aggressively. He was decisive, and like some of those like short yardage situations, he didn't waste any time. He was up the middle. This is the next gen chart. As you said, man, a lot of stuff in between the tackles, hard running, and just like arm tackles weren't bringing him down. It was a good 1-2 punch. And Cook, man, and some of those, not just pitches, like there were a couple of traps and draws that were called that were blown up. And he was like, he had the speed to bounce it, and that's just something they haven't had the last couple of years.
There was a play. It was in the first half, and it's only like a 5-yard gain. But it was blocked for like a 1-yard gain or a 2-yard gain. And he just has the speed to hit that corner and timeout because we got a very generous donation from Matt.
Appreciate it, man.
Matt, that's awesome. Thank you so much, man. Tremendously appreciated. Oh, let's dive into this question because this is also a good question too.
Yes,
so thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. And thank you for the really good question. Matt says, was the run success more scheme-based, or do you think it was the line clicking better?
I kind of alluded to it already. I'm going to start with a couple different answers. I think, first of all, the Bills' offensive line, they were way more physical. I think it was a game plan thing. They were like, we need to dominate up front. They did. And I think that's where it started. Now, some of the stuff they did schematically, we're going to break it down. We're going to break that stuff down tonight. I think they leaned on some of the stuff that worked for them. And a lot of that stuff had to do with gap type runs, getting guys, tackles pulling, that sort of thing. So I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think it's, black or white. But I think on that short week against this team, it was like they wanted it more. This is going to be our fastball today, not for the year, but for today. Yeah. And they just took it to the Browns again. And the Browns, all things considered, aren't a good team when it comes to stopping the run. So that would be my 2 cents on it.
I think, not to piggyback too much, but one, I think a huge piece, I want to start with the line clicking better. This starting 5 did not get a bunch of work in the offseason together. Spencer Brown was banged up. Roger Saffold was banged up. Ryan Bates was banged up. They didn't have a lot of time together. Then Spencer Brown got banged up again in the beginning of the year. Mitch Morse missed some time. Dawkins has had a couple nagging things. This line is still very much gelling and coming together, and chemistry is a huge, huge, huge component of offensive line play. It gets talked about all the time. Knowing who is next to you and how they play and what they do and how they operate is a huge component of offensive line play. So just as the season has gone on, I've expected to see better offensive line play from the Bills just because they're playing more together, because they haven't some people
playing more together, and then more importantly in a new new scheme, techniques, and
Huge.
new offense. Really,
Yes.
again, I said it. I think there's a different offense than Dable's, and that
Agreed.
includes Aaron Cromer's pass blocking and run blocking.
Yes, and it includes a brand new piece in Roger Saffold. Granted,
Saffold.
he's got experience coming from Cromer's system, but he's playing with guys he's never played with before. And I know people might say like, "Well, it's week 11. Shouldn't they have clicked by now?" They don't have 11 regular season weeks of snaps together. They don't even have a full training camp and preseason together. So I think it is partially the line clicking better. But yes, Matt, we're going to dive into the scheme pieces. And
That's gonna be
Eric,
fun too.
the physical piece was great. Like there were some reps where Roger Saffold is mauling dudes. And Dawkins
throwing people like
physicality and exactly what you said, the athleticism. This Bills line isn't always going to win the physical battle, but Mitch Morse can move. Ryan Bates can move. Spencer Brown is arguably the best athlete on the field like every week, and Deion Dawkins can move as well. And every once in a while, when it's a tendency breaker, they can pull Roger Saffold and he might be able to do some things. But it was a good design of getting the Bills offensive line on the move and the physical, concerted effort of being physical and violent up front and really kind of setting the tone from the get-go, knowing, again, that's what the game plan was all week. So they came out not with blinders on, but that offensive line was seeing red and they wanted to mash up front.
Yeah, and talk about, shutting things down. We're going to flip to the defensive side, talk about the defense, how the Bills shut down Nick Chubb, 14 attempts, 19 yards, held him to 1 first down. I mean, they had a great scheme on the defensive side for stopping Chubb, obviously the centerpiece to their offense. After we talk about the defense, we're going to get to the film on both sides of the ball there. So we have some film of some of the rushes that we just talked about. We're going to have some film of the defense stopping Nick Chubb. But I want to get your thoughts on the game plan to shut down the best running back in the NFL.
Man, it was something I was tremendously concerned about. I think we all were, really seeing what the Jets were able to do, not holistically on the ground, but in specific moments against the Bills, what the Vikings were able to do, not just a home run shot from Cook, but what they were able to do again in overtime, like a high leverage situation. And then coupled with some of the schematic pieces that the Green Bay Packers used that the Jets followed along with, the Vikings, not so much, but this Bills defense has struggled to stop gap scheme runs. You and I were talking about this offline, right? Like their one gapping, get upfield, aggressive, penetrating nature can sometimes be a hindrance. It's very risk reward. That's why you'll see the Bills, they'll get a tackle for loss on first down and it might be 2nd and 13, or they're going to get gashed and it might be 2nd and 4. Like that's how they kind of play that game. And they play the probabilities of, eventually we're going to get you, force you into an advantageous situation for us. We're going to play the pass and we're going to win. And coming into this game, the Cleveland Browns were super balanced, 46% gap runs, 52% zone. That's ridiculously balanced in today's NFL. And it was a huge concern knowing 45% gap, 52% zone. But they came into this game and ran more zone than gap. And I thought it kind of played, as you and I talked about, it played more into the Bills' hand because the Bills are better at defending those kind of runs. And we saw time and time again on the interior, Daquan Jones especially, but Tim Settle, Ed Oliver, Jordan Phillips getting across the face of centers and guards.
The defensive tackles dominated.
They were cutting off the front side of zone runs and forcing cutbacks into pursuit from Von Miller and Ed Oliver and Matt Milano. It was a legitimate team effort that the Browns kind of played into a little bit, and the Bills dominated up front and controlled the interior a lot.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, with the zone runs, it's a lot easier to gap out. It's a lot easier to maintain gap integrity when hey, everyone's got a gap. Those gaps are moving. Stay with that gap. Now, when you have gap runs, so your power runs where you have a puller, your counter trade where you have a puller and tight end or fullback, it's a lot more difficult to fill and maintain run gap integrity because those gaps are moving. They're taking away gaps from one side, adding to the other. You got to have defensive linemen fit properly, and you got to have linebackers playing off those defensive linemen, moving with those gaps. So there's a lot more poetry to that motion. So that is a thing that the Bills have struggled with, those gap runs, 100%. And when they did run a gap run with Chubb, he got like 9 yards. Like it would work if they just didn't stick to it, because that's not necessarily Bill Callahan's a zone guy at heart. And I think that's, kind of the way they wanted to attack things. But I think what it came down to is, yes, the physicality, the defensive tackles. I mean, every single one of them, were dominating their one-on-ones, and they were creating run-throughs for linebackers. Yeah. They just made it so easy for everyone at the second and third level coming to fit up the run. And then let's talk about Matt Milano,
Whew.
because obviously he had a hell of a game. So 10 tackles, a sack, a fumble recovery, 4 stops, 2 of which came against the run. We're going to break
Almost had
down
an
some of those.
interception.
Almost an interception. 5 tackles against the run alone. So half his tackles were against the run. His average tackle depth was 1 yard. So talk about Milano's play in this game and this season, because it's been talked about from a lot of his teammates in the locker room.
He's been a true disruptor. And this goes back to something that you had identified a couple of years ago, and we've broken down on this show for a couple of years, Matt Milano being that disruptor. And when he plays alongside Tremaine Edmonds, Tremaine Edmonds is usually the guy to clean it up. But Milano has just been a ball of controlled and organized chaos this year. You've got him shooting gaps, front side, back side. You've got him making tackles for loss. You've got him making impactful tackles against running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. He covers everywhere. He's the guy that can get out of the flat. He can cover in the middle. He can match coverage. He can cover in man. He can cover in spot drop zone. He's been such a huge weapon and chess piece for this Bills defense. And this game, you really got to see a lot of that skill set, but you also got to see some of the mental side too. Him controlling checks and calling things out based on what he's seeing from Jacoby Brissett and communication.
We're going to talk about that one. Yeah.
Like, that's a huge piece, right? Like, I think and I think this happens with football players a lot. Like, it's a physical game. It's a violent game. So I think often the physical traits are talked about: speed, size, toughness, hitting, all that kind of stuff, violence. But the mental side for players, aside from quarterbacks, doesn't really get talked about enough. And this was a game where you saw a lot of mental strength from Matt Milano, in addition to leadership in terms of aligning the defense, something that Tremaine Edmonds does a lot, right? That kind of fell onto Milano a little bit in terms of organizing the fronts and getting everything set. And so from a physical perspective, from a mental perspective, he had a really strong game against Cleveland. And again, it's something, like you said, that we've seen all year. He's had a tremendous year, somebody who should be in consideration for all pro status. He's had a tremendous year to this point.
Yeah, in this game, especially, again, with no main in the middle there, like you said,
which is important. Tremaine Edmonds matters.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done arguing over it. I don't want to see this defense without him anymore. I've come to that conclusion after the last several weeks. Milano is a hell of a player, but having those two together make this defense go. The coaches, when they first got here, they said when they brought those guys on, the playmakers are at linebacker. And some of those, they make plays in different ways, and people need to realize that. And I think over the last couple of weeks, some have, just based on the comments I've gotten, people that, are now saying they are Tremaine Edmonds believer and how important he is to this defense, how much he factors into this defense. Because we saw it, especially in this game in coverage, no disrespect at all to Dodson.
No.
But when they were trying to call the same plays that they call for Edmonds, you saw how he was exposed. And that's no disrespect to him. That is more showing us how important Tremaine Edmonds is to this defense. And they've missed him, especially in this game. In last week's game, when he went out, middle of the field wide open for the Vikings. So Milano is an important piece. Obviously, he's the playmaker. He's a flashy guy. And he's going to get a lot of the praise from the average fan. But let's not act like Tremaine isn't important to this defense. But another guy that was back this game who helped on the field as a leader, that got, that secondary. And you gotta remember, there's a lot of guys coming in and out at corner. They're rotating. You got a young safety opposite, Jordan Poyer. Jordan Poyer's leadership was also showing on the field. His playmaking was also showing up on the field. Obviously, that big play against Njoku on the screen on that deep over route from Njoku, like Poyer. And you can see him in some of the film, just, when teams motion, what happens is coverages change. There are certain checks they have to combat certain formations that, change based on motion. And you see him after every play, when there's a motion play prior to snap, you see the players looking at him in the back end saying, hey, like, what's the coverage? And you see him giving the signals. You see him, like, he's in charge back there. And good thing him and Hamlin are a good pairing. Yes, they missed high, but I thought Hamlin stepped up. But Poyer being back, again, a guy that they missed the last couple of weeks on some of those run fits coming from depth. Jaquan Johnson wasn't getting it done, and Jordan Poyer did.
Yeah, Poyer's just again, from a physical perspective, and also from the neck up, just very cerebral, but also very physical, and is such a leader on this team off the field, but also on the field because of his ability to get everybody aligned right, his ability to make plays. And you saw that piece, safety in this defense, especially with how the Bills have a propensity to be in too high shells over 70% of the time coming into last week, which is top 4 in the league. We know they like to sit in those too high shells and they either go with 7-man or 6-man boxes. When that happens, your safeties have to come and make plays from depth when the run happens. You have to spin down and you have to make a play. So safety is tremendously important in this defense, not just from a coverage perspective and for disguising coverage, wink, wink, nudge, nudge on the back end, but also because you have to come and fit the run. And your safety coming from depth and fitting the run and making a tackle is often the difference in this defense. It's often the difference between 2nd and 6 or another 1st down and 10. If you come up and you miss that tackle, like we saw with Jaquan Johnson, like we saw, the big 81-yard run from Dalvin Cook, Benford misses that tackle, but Cam Lewis comes too shallow on his angle and he's unable to get back. If there's a better angle on top, maybe that alters the path of that run. Safety play is so important in today's NFL, but especially in this Bills defense. And you saw the calming presence mentally and from an execution standpoint that Jordan Poyer brought. So obviously a huge boon to bring him back to
kind of
this.
Yeah. And to kind of wrap up this segment, Sarah asked, do you think Klein will play? I think there's a good chance he could play if he's ready, obviously from the shoulders up. And I just don't think that makes that much of a difference. I just remember Klein being in there and the defense having to change because he was in there, because he struggles in coverage in many ways that Dodson does. When Klein was in a few years back, they were having to blitz him like 30-40% of the time, and he was always playing downhill, which is fine, but I just don't see a big difference when it comes to the coverage portion of things, and this is a coverage-based defense. So, I mean, yeah, he probably plays, but I don't think it makes much of a difference, to be honest. I think he's very much limited in coverage just as much as Dodson is.
I muted myself. I don't know how. Yeah, I'd probably skew Dodson from a coverage perspective. And yeah, Klein can be a missile and a bullet coming forward and blitzing against the run and against the pass, like you showed a couple of years ago. But the problem with that is, like, if your skill set is limited, then the defense is limited. You kind of silo yourself and kind of make yourself a bit predictable. But who knows? Especially if Edmonds is out again, maybe we see him crack that lineup just a bit for some consistency sake. And speaking of consistency, Eric, as you start to bring up the film and get things ready, the sponsor for the show, Nickel City Cigars. In case you folks did not know or were unaware, we're extremely proud and happy to announce this partnership that we've continued to really rein in throughout this regular season. Nickel City Cigars, they do the cigar business unlike anyone else, genuinely, much like we at Cover One analyze the bills and break down the bills unlike anyone in this business. That's how Nickel City Cigars approaches the cigar game. They've got an arcade. They've got cool local 716 craft beers. They've got TVs set up throughout so you can watch games when you're hanging out there. It's a new age take on an old world tradition in terms of the cigar game. They deliver to your house. You can order online and pick up in store. There's just a variety of ways for them to meet the needs of the consumer, in addition to have a bunch of cool things besides awesome cigars, which are tremendous from them. Use a promo code COVER1, get 20% off on your online order or in store. Again, Nickel City Cigars, located downtown. They do it unlike anyone else, and we're tremendously proud to have their partnership. You can find their online link in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or any one of the podcasting apps or platforms. Go and get your smoke on, and let's watch the Buffalo Bills smoking some of these runs against the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, it's Nickel City Cigars. Like, we're proud, as Anthony said, we're proud to have them affiliated and a partner with us. They are veteran owned, again, really, really good people there. Yeah. It's kind of a throwback type vibe there. And so they're good people, man. Definitely, if you guys are smokers, I'm not personally, but we're going to go over some of these plays and we're going to highlight some of those plays, and that's when we're going to light it up for them. But yeah, the run game, guys, like, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the offensive run game, then the defensive game plan against Nick Chubb. And it starts off with one hell of a play here, Anthony. So the Bills have Cook in the backfield, and talk about eye candy, personnel grouping, maximizing your talent at tackle. You see this 16-yard run from James Cook, and there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, the guy coming in motion across the formation. That's Naheem Hines. James Cook in the backfield. You have Shakir, you have Davis, you have a tight end in Morris on the line. So you have everyone in your screen right now. 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end. You have the jet action, eye candy across the formation. But on the snap, now you're going to get more for these guys at the second level of the process. And there are several guys in the box, as you guys can see, right? So look at what they have to process and unpack. You got the dart call. So you have a tackle pull coming from left to right on your screen. But then also from the other side, you have this guy coming across, Shakir coming across. So you have 2 guys split flowing across the screen right here. All right. And then, of course, Josh Allen's got the ball in the belly of Cook. He makes it look like he's reading the defensive end. He's really not. That defensive end, you see him chase Shakir and kind of hug his hip. And he does that because he technically has the dive. They're defending zone read. He has the quarterback. That's why they execute this. And watch how this window dressing opens up the gap over the middle. It's just beautiful. Look at that lane. All that eye candy prior to snap. All that split flow as the ball is snapped opens up things. Again, the Bills are pulling this guy. That's taking one less gap from the left side of the screen here. Watch how 3 Browns defenders are in one gap.
They take themselves out of position.
You have Dawkins climbing, and you have Cook bouncing it off tackle, and just a beautiful play. This is called dart. This is a tackle pull. The Bills run it in both directions. And again, that's maximizing your personnel. They're not going to move a lot of guys vertically and vertically displace these guys. They want to use angles. They want to use athleticism. And this is one hell of a play from Dorsey, pre to post snap, but also execution on the field.
Something we've talked about on this show, especially the last several weeks, 2 things, more play action from the Buffalo Bills and more pre-snap motion. Just the simplest thing. And you saw multiple times in this game how some pre-snap motion can lead to confusion. It at the very least, that motion can cause shifts, and it forces the defense to communicate and potentially have to adjust what they were doing when everybody was static and not doing anything. This time, you couple that, you get the motion from Hines, but also the split flow action between Shakir and then the dart pull from Spencer Brown. There's just so much going on. If you're a defender,
and where's the ball? These guys are crossing. How do you even know where the ball is at this point? If you're these guys, you have no idea where the ball is.
No, it's so hard. And for those, just in case those who don't know, as a linebacker, as a defender, usually you are reading the offensive lineman. Sometimes you have a tight end cue, but if somebody's flashing, if you see that flash of color, you are reading and reacting to that. If you're getting 2 flashes of color in opposite directions, it almost can kind of just make you stand still. Or if you're Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah there, number 28, you kind of guesstimate and you put yourself in the wrong gap and you just make it easy. Mitch Morse doesn't even have to do anything. No, Morse just steps up and is like, oh, okay, cool. And just turns and walls him off. And that's it. And then good vision from Cook, the agility, his jump cuts are really premium. He's got that ability to just smoothly and silkily just jump. He reads and sees the action in the backfield, hops around it, gets around, gets upfield. We see that burst and we see that ability to get north and south quickly from him, much like his brother Dalvin has that same piece. But this is just a simple little tweak, right? A simple thing. Let's add some window dressing. Not like Matt Canada and the Steelers where you're just adding it for the sake of adding it, but they're adding it for a purpose. And it's nice to see these type of things being added because, like we said, the Bills running game has struggled a bit. This is something that can start to throw a defense off balance, and it did multiple times in this game for the Cleveland Browns. And again, it's nice. Just the Bills offense, they're not mashers. They're athletic. So you'll see this play a lot. The Bills run dart. Why? Because you've got a tackle like Spencer Brown. You've got a tackle like Deion Dawkins. Both of them are good movement guys. Let's get them out in space. Let's lean into their strengths, and let's run the football the best way we can.
Yeah, and linebackers and guys at the second level are taught to read interior offensive linemen. So these 3 guys, then it's usually next guy back is like the lead back, a tight end or fullback, and then just the back and flow of the play itself. When you're pulling tackles, that's not within the triangle read of a linebacker. So it totally throws you off, and you're getting down blocks and angle blocks from different guys that you're not used to seeing it from, and then you're just getting speed up the field. Obviously, a great element that Cook adds. So on the next play, the Bills get 17 yards. This is another James Cook run here. And this was the pitch out play to the top of the screen. And I just love this play, this alert. So when Josh goes to his helmet like that, that's an alert call. That means that in the huddle, they had 2 plays called. And so when Josh got up to the line, he calls alert. And the reason he calls the alert is because right before the snap, watch the defensive tackle right here and watch Myles Garrett. Watch as the ball is about to be snapped or Josh makes it seem like it's going to be a snap. Watch those guys pinch right there. So they pinch into the A gaps. Now, to me, that looks like, okay, they're expecting QB sneak. So Josh, I assume he had a QB sneak called here. Maybe that's just my assumption, my guess. But I think he had a QB sneak called here in the huddle. But he also had this pitch out called as the alert. So he says, okay, we need to get into the alert. We need to get to that second run call. That's the pitch play out of 21 personnel. Again, Hines is to the top of the screen. You see the alert call, and you're getting James Cook on the perimeter, some nice blocks out front, and you're getting him up the field for an explosive run.
Yeah, what we talked about earlier, the combination and the complementary football between Devin Singletary and James Cook. Singletary, more of the inside runs in this game, and Cook more of, he had some inside runs himself, but trying to get him more on the perimeter and take advantage of that speed and that agility on the outside. And it's just a beautiful check from Josh Allen here. And a nice built-in coming into this, you've got an A and you've got a B. And if they're set up to take away A, cool, you just throw B. If they're set up to take away B, you stick with A and you're good to go. It's a great option to make the defense wrong no matter what. And the Bills have had a good crack toss game for the majority of the year, going all the way back to the Tennessee, actually a couple times, very few against the Rams, but a couple times against Tennessee. Deion Dawkins crushing somebody in that game. Actually, and James Cook had a big run late on a crack toss as well. Yeah, in the fourth quarter. It's been a nice piece again. But let's look at some of the common themes with this play, like we had with the previous play. Who's out there on the perimeter in movement? It's Deion Dawkins. So again, you're leaning into an offensive lineman who's good on the move, who's good in space, and then you get a good block from Roger Saffold taking his man down. Also, this play doesn't work if the blocking on the perimeter isn't sound. Look at the effort, and this is where Gabe Davis's size and frame and length comes into play. Look at him. Gets his hands, gets some extension, shields his man. Hines, not the best block, but enough to get
all
the shoulder.
angles though, right? Like
Exactly.
he doesn't have to have perfect physicality and form here. He just needs to get into a line where when Cook hits full speed, he's disrupting that linebacker and forcing him to undercut him, not allow him to work over the top. And he does enough of that. Again, it's not perfect, but it's good enough, and the speed of Cook obviously accentuates that.
And that's what it is, right? Like when you've got a back with that kind of speed and burst, you don't have to be as precise with your blocking. You don't have to be picture perfect with your form. You just need to impede the defender enough to allow that split second of open, space to exist for James Cook, and he's able to hit it. So solid execution and design and, alert check from Josh Allen. Real quality play on that one.
Yeah, here's a run from the red zone prior to the snap again. You're getting movement with Diggs. Look at how many guys are in the box, but what that motion does to Diggs, the defender in the box, that guy has to widen out. So from the end zone, I just love this play. It's very simple. It's zone blocking, but they're using Gilliam as a quasi-puller. So you have that action across the formation, but you can see this box is quite full. It says 7 defenders up top, but really this guy is on the fringe, John Johnson, and this might as well be 8. All right, especially with how tight Knox and Davis are in their formation and splits. So here comes Diggs across the formation. These guys are all bumping right to left on the screen. And then Diggs pulls that guy out of the box. So now they're pulling someone out of the box. And so these guys are all zone blocking to the right. Gilliam's coming and taking Garrett. And then this guy is going to be basically unblocked. He's almost like a read defender because the Browns are defending this like it's zone read. So Garrett's got the running back and Johnson's going to have the quarterback. But because of the type of run here, you can see Devin Singletary just cut up inside off of Gilliam, decisive cuts, bouncing it. It's what we call running the ladder. You're starting vertically, you're working through the middle of the line of scrimmage, and you're bouncing it out wide. I love everything about this play. It's simple. It's a unique formation. It's condensed. You have a fullback in there that loves hitting, and the pre-snap stuff's great. And then you're just, again, running right by Myles Garrett.
I love this one because this is what teams, especially the Packers and Jets, what they were doing to the Bills. They were using this motion to pull defenders from the box and create a numbers advantage mathematically in the box. So to see the Bills do it to another team brings some joy. Myles Garrett is a stud, and Reggie Gilliam takes him out. Again, shout out to Gabe Davis on this play for getting downfield and making an impact with, honestly, like a good solid block, getting upfield, but at the very least just impeding. And this is leaning into, Devin Singletary's skill set. I think he's more of a gap runner than he is a zone runner, but based on how this is blocked with the split foe action, he's able to just make one cut and go. And he gets upfield and you see that toughness. And he ran hard on this day. This leads back into the running chart that we showed earlier, right? Where's he working? In between the hashes, in between the tackles, put his foot in the ground, get upfield, use that low center of gravity, and strengthen the run game.
Yeah, and talking about put your foot in the ground, this is what we want to see from James Cook. Josh Allen under center, two tight ends in here. It's 12 personnel. They're aligned to the left side of the field, to the wide side of the field. And again, you have at least seven guys on the box. Another one out here again on the fringe of the box, so he doesn't get counted. But it is still the formation, the personnel grouping. Put a lot of guys in the box. You see the single high safety. This is a mid zone run. You're gonna see a decisive run. So he's not bouncing it. This guy forces him to cut it back inside immediately before he even gets the ball. He's making that cut. So hell of a, great vision for James Cook. And to me, coming in to, the season, I was not the highest on his vision. This is good stuff. His eyes are up. He's reading not just this guy. You can see him even reading this guy because he knows he's going to get beyond that next level. But look at the backside. So they're running mid zone to the right. Watch Saffold, watch Dawkins, watch Knox, watch Morris. Watch how that backside crease opens up. You see Saffold, Dawkins wash that guy down. And these guys are all trying to cut angles because the Bills have good angles by their offensive linemen. This guy tries undercutting Saffold before he gets off the double team. This guy tries, again, cutting inside here and working, and it just takes himself right out of the play. James Cook is too fast. You get north and south and into the open field. This is that dynamic the Bills offense needs. They don't have to run high efficiency runs. As long as when they have Cook on the field, if he can maximize the runs, that's what they need from him. That's the role he needs to play.
He's got that burst. And again, that's that speed and burst to take advantage and, get more than what's blocked, something that the Bills haven't consistently had this year, although this is a well-blocked play. But I love the vision piece. You mentioned he's so comfortable in zone. He displayed it on his tape at Georgia. We thought, coming into the year, some of his pacing in terms of how he'd hit the hole on gap runs needed work, but he's so comfortable, outside zone pressing and then putting his foot in the ground and going. And here you see just that comfortability factor. And he's got the vision. He reads what's going on at the first and second level, alters his cut as soon as he gets the ball. And then again, gets upfield, reads it again, and cuts through the opening. He's got the speed. And I don't want to knock Devin Singletary, but this is a run where maybe Singletary gets caught as he gets through the hole, or he gets hit at the 45 or at the 50.
About this guy right there, the guy that cut the angle.
Honestly, there's a legit chance, but because of Cook's speed and burst, that doesn't happen. Then you add it in with, it's funny, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah on this one, the one who tries to cut on the backside of Quentin Morris. All it takes is a defender to be slightly out of position, right? Instead of working over and continuing to go front side for this for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he tries to short side Quentin Morris and kind of backdoor him and make a play. And he ends up taking himself out. It allows Quentin Morris to just seal him. It continues to create that lane for James Cook. And you got a big run. Really successful piece for the Buffalo.
Okay, Justin, I want to give you a heads up on this. Okay, Justin says, it's troubling how fast Mitch Morse and Spencer Brown got blown up by the guy they initially double teamed. It's not getting blown up. First of all, immediately pre-snap, they know that this is not going to bounce. The first snap, the first read for Cook is, okay, that's a wide 9. This play is not going outside. So that guy can be out wide as all he has to do is get a piece of him. That doesn't matter. It's not going out there anyway. So there's no way he's going to reach him, work to the play side shoulder of that guy. Same with Mitch Morse on this play. Again, they're making the decision for James Cook easier. It's such a quick win in your eyes, a quick win, that it makes a decision for James Cook here. Look where this guy's lined up. He's basically in a 2 technique over the guard. There's no way Mitch Morse is going to work to the play side of him. Again, that makes James Cook's read that much easier. So I don't think they're getting blown up. I think there's no way they're going to make that reach block, and it makes that read for James Cook that much easier. So I wouldn't say that, that's them getting blown up on their double team.
Also, a piece real quick on that, that's part of the advantage of a zone run where it doesn't have to go to any one particular place. The running back can just flow like water and go wherever the crease is. You can have an outside zone run that gets cut back all the way weak side, or it could get cut directly upfield. The running
Most
back goes
do.
I was
Yeah,
thinking that's the idea. Like you can just, however the defense lines up with their front, as the zone blocking scheme allows you to make them wrong no matter what. There's no ideal hole. The play may be designed to go to the outside, but based on pre-snap alignment or post-snap adjustments, the running back is able to easily adjust. So it looks like that they're losing those reps, but in reality, they're just continuing to create the lane based off the zone blocking identity.
exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. That's not them getting blown up. So on the next play, 18-yard gain here. Someone mentioned Bobby Hart earlier. Bobby Hart is in as actual offensive lineman. They have a tight end next to him. And again, loaded box here. It's a loaded box. They're running pin and pull, which we love. So you're getting Bates. You're getting Morse. You're even getting Saffold on a little slingshot right here. This guy, again, there's no way that Saffold is going to get a piece of him with Morse pulling. So what's he do? He uses a slingshot move, throws him upfield by the guy, totally throws him out of the play. And then you're getting, again, Morse, Bates on the kick out, Morse up inside, and then some really hard running from Devin Singletary. Some great vision, that slipperiness into his game. It's just so much fun to watch. This is his bread and butter. When you say, Anthony, like pin and pull runs are his bread and butter.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason that he saw like over 80% of the snaps down the stretch last year. He saw 100% of the reps in the playoff games last year as the Bills started to lean into that pin and pull system and scheme. And you highlighted the offensive lineman getting movement. That's a big piece, and you highlight him right there. I love Dawson Knox getting to the second level. Nice piece. And again, doesn't have to be the cleanest, doesn't have to completely wash his
technique's
down.
money, though. It's money. So that guy is fast flowing with him. So you just take him where he wants to go and watch his left hand. This is what, offensive tackles are taught when guys get around the corner on them. You put your hand on their hip and you just ride them wide, take them where they want to go. Like that is just money. Like that whole front side, the down blocks, the pulls and kickouts, and then the running by motor. Like this is just so good. Again, this has been the Bills' bread and butter for several years now. We've wanted them to run it more than they have. And they busted it out a bunch from, with Josh Allen under center. And we just love watching it.
Yeah, it's great. Again, it leans into the strength of this offensive line, which is movement and athleticism. And I love the piece, again, that you highlighted from Dawson Knox. So, and that's a good point, too. I feel like a lot of times people think blocking, actually, we even talked about a little bit on that previous zone play. I think a lot of people think it's like, well, you got to take your guy and just completely move him out of the way. And that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes you can just use their momentum and have an angle and you just shepherd them. That's all Dawson Knox does here. He's like, oh, you want to go to the right? Okay, cool. I'll just guide you to the right. Singletary makes a great read off it. This was a running back who, of the 50 running backs who had at least 40 carries last year, he was third in broken tackles plus missed tackles forced per attempt from a percentage standpoint. That's his plus matchup. His plus trait is breaking tackles and forcing missed tackles. And we saw it on that run there. It's just hard running.
Yeah.
And this is also too, this
close.
is so close. And this is also too, right? Like you're later in the game. Guys are tired. They've been getting leaned on. You're down. The last thing you want to do is have to make tackles against a running back who's fresher and who wants to run hard. Like you don't want to be doing that in the third and fourth quarter towards the end of the game when you've already been beaten up and you've already been playing your butt off.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So again, this is the 4-minute drill. This is an 11-yard gain. Again, look at the personnel grouping and the vision by motor here, right up the gut. This is one play that it's awesome to see that they're running. Now, it doesn't go as intended, but so look at the personnel. Extra offensive lineman off to the left there, Bobby Hart. They motion Morse across the formation there. They're in the old school I formation, double tight type look, but then they pull the center this way. And so they're running a little wind back play where both running backs go this way. And then
you this multiple times in this game.
Yeah. And so you're seeing them coming back across the formation and you're like, okay, Motor's going to follow Gilliam with Morris. No, this is one of those plays like power runs, A-gap power runs where normally you're not able to hit that backside gap where the guard just pulled from. This is one of those type of plays. The center pulled and everyone gets washed. And then just right up the middle is an easy gain for Motor and just the slightest of movement as he's hitting the line of scrimmage. Like watch right there. Like he kind of pushes here and then bounces it that way. Like this is just a cool run, old school I formation, but you have a wicked athletic center in Morse and a sledgehammer in Gilliam, and you're trying to running out that way. But Motor just takes what they give him, and that's right up the middle, right down Broadway.
right where you want to attack this Cleveland Browns team. They're not the strongest in the spine of their defense, and they're a little lighter there in terms of, weight and size and frame in those pieces. So lean on those guys. You highlighted Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah there. Again, playing off of that aggressiveness, tries the spin.
Gets
He
tossed.
gets tossed for good measure by Spencer Brown, but they put him in conflict several times. Like he in this position too, like with the numbers that they have on that left side of the screen,
Yeah.
if JOK keeps trying to work across Spencer Brown's face, maybe Singletary gets forced into more of his help or into more of his pursuit. But again, because he tries to spin and make a play, it allows that is the gap. That's the
Yeah.
lane. You're thinking right here, okay, JOK is going to keep working across and try and cut that. And where's Myles Garrett? He's crashing down. But no, Owusu-Koramoah spins back on the other side. The gap is still there. And I think that's what, when you see that little move from Singletary, that's him reading it. I think he sees JOK start to spin inside. He knows where the pursuit defenders are coming from. And so it's just
This is a run blitz too. This is a run blitz. Like there's no need for Jock to be doing this. Like you said, he could just stay home and it's probably this gap's obviously not gonna be as large.
No, and again, you play into the aggressiveness, and this is something that isn't unique for this game. In case somebody's saying like, "Well, yeah, but they don't know that ahead of time." This is how Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah plays, and sometimes it leads to awesome tackles for -5 yards, and sometimes it leads to a 15-yard gain because he's not gap sound and he messes up the whole integrity of the run defense. So it was a nice pinpointed attack in addition to the design and scheme. Again, something that we've been wanting to see from the Buffalo Bills. And yes, the Cleveland Browns run defense isn't the most pristine or the most stalwart of groups. This isn't the steel curtain Steelers as far as defenses go, but it's how the Bills were winning with their run game and what they were doing that is the key piece.
There's
That's
value.
the encouraging part.
Exactly. There's value in that, man. With the personnel groupings, the short week, the creativity pre and post snap, the movement by some of their offensive linemen, centers, guards, and tackles. Like I still can find value in the way they dominated that run game there. But this is even more telling. Stopping Nick Chubb. The Bills did a really good job, against the Titans with Derrick Henry, and but this stopping Nick Chubb to me was just a whole different ball game, especially when you consider how good the offensive line of the Browns is.
I mean, everybody knows Wyatt Teller, the guy who would have still been the best guard ever if he stayed with Buffalo. I don't agree with that, but people believe that. You got Bitonio, Jedrick Wills at left tackle, who's a stud, Jack Conklin at right tackle, like a tremendous foursome up there. And again, they've got tremendous coaching up front as well. But we saw time and time again, even against Teller, Ed Oliver got the best of him, and it starts right here on this play, a quick get off and good hand technique. And this happened to Teller a lot where he was kind of just left in the dust because of the quickness of Ed Oliver and the penetration inside.
Yeah, and of course, on this play, it's 2nd and 7. Everyone's up near the line of scrimmage, and we talked about Milano, and he doesn't get in here, but you see him occupy two guys. Look at Daquan insert here. There's Milano, and then you see everyone just down there, and look at the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's in favor of the Bills, and as you said, Ed Oliver is just tenacious. He's just like, again, a Tasmanian devil. Just chopping hands down, and it's just next thing you know, he's by Teller and in the backfield for the tackle for loss, and then you see him kind of celebrating.
He's got a great celebration. Him and Shaq Lawson have the two best celebrations for the Bills defense. It's great.
Yeah, as I said, I think it started with the defensive linemen, the defensive tackles in this game, their ability to penetrate, the ability to force cutbacks, like you see on this play. So you have Daquan Jones over here on the right, you have Ed Oliver on the left here, and just watch how they work together. So off the snap, and I will say this. The center getting injured early in the game was a major factor.
Yes.
This backup center was terrible. And there's just no way he could handle the penetration, the speed, and violence that Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, Ed Oliver, and Jordan Phillips brought. And you see, there's no way that center is going to be able to reach Daquan Jones here. He's in the gap already. And again, on these zone-type runs, that's forcing the cutback immediately. But then, they don't have the crease on the backside because Ed Oliver is just owning Conklin on this play. And just watch how he just throws him over his own man. And Miller's there. Everyone's there to rally. Like, they just played physical, violent, aggressive, and on the offensive side of the line of scrimmage.
They created so much displacement and reestablished the line of scrimmage and got push and penetration left and right. And I love this play. This was like one of my top 3 plays for this entire game. It starts with Daquan Jones. He literally cuts off the entire front side of this zone run because of the penetration he gets with the get off and leverage that he plays with. And then exactly to your point on that backside, right? This is where team defense comes in. You get a quick arm over from Von Miller, who completely olays the tight end. And then Ed Oliver working on Conklin, sheds him, everybody rallying. It starts with Daquan Jones, but it works because of the backside pursuit and close down from Oliver and Von Miller. And even Dane Jackson coming up to be a part of the run fit as well. And this is what you have to do against a good ground attack with a tremendous offensive line and arguably the best running back in all of football right now in Nick Chubb. Look at that. Like the sideline angle is beautiful. Look where Daquan Jones is playing. He's completely in the backfield. He has wrecked this entire run.
The dude's knees buckle. Look at the center's knees buckle. I mean, he totally clogged up the middle of that line.
The poor dude, like just absolutely, exactly. Like he buckled under the weight and power of Daquan Jones. And it's really something when you can take away an entire side of a run, arguably by yourself. Daquan Jones does it here. And again, like we talked about earlier with the Bills on their zone run, right? The idea of a zone run is you can still be right even when you're wrong, and the running back can just flow like water. Wherever there's a hole, the water can go into. The water's the running back, but there's no hole here. Everything is plugged up and it's dammed up and there's nowhere to go. And that's how you have to play team defense when you're fitting the run. That was beautiful.
Yeah, and here's another tackle for loss. Shaq Lawson, Tim Settle on this play, minus 2 yards on this play. But this is one of those plays that it just, again, the gap integrity. And look, this is a light box. This is a really light box. And this is what the Jets and Packers did. They didn't use an extra tight end. They used this wide receiver. For the Jets game, it was Mims. You saw him kind of block the defensive end, and they were able to get the Jets running backs Carter and Robinson on the edge there. And we even saw it in the Packers game as well. But watch, again, the interior play from Tim Settle. So Tim Settle goes backdoor. So now Milano's, again, he's got to make it right. So he's kind of hanging low. He's scraping over the top. If the running back is going to commit right here, that's where Milano would fill. But you see them playing off each other on this play. But again, they work the center. And Settle has the athleticism to go ahead and chase him down. Shaq Lawson, one of the better edge setters. He's not letting what happened in the Jets game happen to him here, and he helps set that edge and blow up the play again in the backfield.
The center technically reaches Tim Settle and he gets across his face, but Settle keeps working and he keeps driving. Huge. He's point number 1 for me. And then you got Shaq on the outside setting a good edge against an initial double team and then against a left tackle in Jedrick Wills, who again is really good, but Shaq disengages from him quickly. You see the fits from Taron Johnson, from Damar Hamlin. There's nowhere to go. Everybody is focused on the ball carrier. Even if somebody misses this tackle, boom. If somebody misses this tackle, this run is still bottled up because of the gap integrity. And also another piece that I like too, if you rewind it back a little bit, this was one of my favorite plays from Damar Hamlin. He's coming from depth and he quick triggers so fast. That's the reason that 18 leaves this double team, because he has to go pick up Hamlin. And him leaving that double team helps Shaq Lawson, boom, like you highlighted. It helps him set that edge and get upfield and cut off Chubb, which allows this to get forced back into Tim Settle. This is something, and it worked in a good way. This is why, to everybody watching and listening, this is why Erik and I get so frustrated with film and talking on Twitter when somebody just blames one player for a run fit. Run fits are tremendously complicated. There's so many moving pieces and puzzle pieces and breadcrumbs that get put together to put the whole picture. Tim Settle makes this play, and so does Shaq Lawson, but it's the result of like 5-6 players executing individually and arguably like 9 players doing their job holistically. Run fits are complicated, and it takes everybody. It takes a village to raise a child, and the child is the run stop here, and that was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Chubb couldn't really get going. It's because the Bills are playing on their side of the line of scrimmage. Here's a lead draw play on first down towards the end of the first half. And again, watch the interior defensive line. Watch Daquan Jones on the left. Watch Ed Oliver on the right. Watch these beasts. I mean, especially Jones. He throws the offensive lineman here. Oh, here comes the center kicking out to him. Trying to draw him in. And then just watch. Oh, Daquan's helmet eyes are right here. watch him throw the center and just go and get Chubb, and then Ed Oliver closes as well. I mean, again, this center was out of his league, and Daquan Jones, guys, he's been doing this all year. We highlight it pretty much every week on social media or in the film room. This guy's been a beast for them. He controls a lot of things that go on over the middle, and Ed Oliver is coming along now too. So that's been fun to see because Ed Oliver's getting back to healthy status, and he's starting to blow things up himself.
Daquan Jones has had a really good year, but I think what's even more important with that is the solid year that he's had and the inconsistency in terms of snaps that we've seen from the defensive interior. Ed Oliver's missed time with injury. Settle's been banged up. The group's been affected by Jordan Phillips being out. They've had to bring in Brandon Bryant to see meaningful reps and just a variety of depth guys and practice squad guys. And knock on wood, I'm literally knocking. Daquan Jones has been the one constant, and he's affecting the run game. He's affecting the pass game. There's a legit hole there on this draw.
And they have numbers. Again, this is a 6-man box, and you have Dodson, he's getting picked up right there. Like, if these two guys don't converge on this, this could be a good run.
1,000%. That hole exists, and then it's gone in the blink of an eye because Jones sheds his man. And again, here's another rep where Ed Oliver works through Wyatt Teller and just gets the best of him. Teller had a couple good reps in this game, but
he threw Oliver a couple times. I will say that he threw him a couple times. Literally,
so we don't want to make it seem like Oliver owned Teller the whole time, but it was a really good matchup. And again, Teller is one of, if not the best guards in football, and it was a good battle. Teller got Ed several times, but Ed got him a bunch, and
especially against the run.
Especially against the run, and it's that relentless nature, the hands, the violence, and everybody working in conjunction.
Yeah, and here's one of the last plays, I believe. This was only a 2-yard gain, but again, this is the one that Milano reads and prior to the snap, because you see Brissett checking to a different play here, and he just reads it and fires his gun on this play. But I'm going to slow it down when we get to the end zone angle, because as I said, you could hear it on the broadcast. You could hear that audible happening. And so when you run these zone runs, there's a certain structure or communication or tags that need to happen. There are different names for these combination blocks. If it's between a center and a guard, if it's between a guard and a tackle, there are different lines of communication that need to happen, especially when you're at the line of scrimmage and these calls are being changed. And so I think Milano, first of all, he picked up on that. And then you can see Brissett calling out the mic, and the mic means that it's a zone run. Usually on a zone run, they are working the zone run, the zone blocking to that mic, to this guy, Jordan Poyer. So to me, that's what they're identifying there. And this is just a run that the Vikings used last week for 81 yards. Weak side zone run, but again, they can pick up on the communication. Daquan Jones again occupies. There's no way that Teller can get to Milano because he fires his gun so quickly, avoids that block, and blows the play up. Another nice edge set from Shaq Lawson. But this is great run defense and one hell of a play from Matt Milano.
Yeah, the chess match piece that we highlighted earlier when it came to Matt Milano, from what he's done from the neck up and mentally on the year, but especially in this game, the ability to diagnose and see what's up. And he literally steps up, and once Jacoby Brissett starts making his checks, Daquan drops to one knee, Milano comes up, talks to him, communicates to Poyer. They're going back and forth. Like, you see the whole shebang, and it leads to Milano pointing out. He and Poyer are in perfect communication. They know what's up. And Milano literally, like, at this point, knows what's coming. And you see him just inching forward and getting ready. Even Dodson signals it a little bit, like the run is going to the right. And then bang, there is no hesitation. Milano is shooting that A-gap no matter what. Shoots it, makes the play in the backfield. Again, nice edge set from Shaq Lawson. But this is one of those plays that really highlights the year that Matt Milano's having, because it's no one just has success in the NFL because they're a good athlete or they're like good physically at football. You have to have a strong mental game, and Matt Milano showed it on several occasions in this game, and this was the big highlight, to really kind of put it all together.
Yeah, no, it was fun. Again, fun kind of diagramming the run game from both sides, because it was crucial. It was the reason that the Bills won the game on both sides of the ball. So yeah, Milano for all pro this year. I like it, Mike. I don't know if he has the production on paper, but man, he is doing everything: rushing, dropping into coverage, creating turnovers, tackles for losses. He literally is doing everything. It's been fun to watch, and a guy that we really like.
Yeah, I think he's starting to get a little more national recognition, but he's so vastly underappreciated on the national scale for what he impacts and what he does. And it's just nice to have one of those guys on this team especially at a key important piece, right? We talk about, oh, nice from Nick says the dominator, Matt Milano. We talk about it in reference to Tremaine Edmonds a lot, but it goes hand in hand with Matt Milano. There's a lot that is asked of a linebacker in the Buffalo Bills defense. And we saw what, I don't want to say it wasn't a fair ask, but you saw what Dodson struggled with in this Browns game because there's a lot asked of you mentally and physically. You need a specific skill set. You need to be able to read the game in a certain way. There's a lot that's put on the shoulders of Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, and to see them succeed in general, but especially given how much responsibility is placed on their shoulders, I think it speaks to them even more as football players.
Yeah, it's again, it's so fun to see his development. That's what's been like the way this team has been built, the continuity, the devotion to the process of developing players. They've had so many of these players from almost like their birth in the NFL, that we've got to study them closely and watch them progress and develop. Matt Milano is again one of those guys that every week he's must-watch film. When I talk to people from around the league that study film or social media that study film and study these guys, and we're talking the linebacker position, he's a guy that everyone loves to study because he's just so explosive. He creates so many splash plays. He ignites the defense in many ways, much like Jordan Poyer. He'll make a big play and it just changes, the dynamic of a drive or a game. They're just those type of playmakers, and it's been a pleasure to watch those guys grow in the league.
Yeah, that's so well said. Like to have a homegrown guy be able to have that type of career development and trajectory, especially to key position for the Bills. And honestly, in today's NFL, like Matt Milano is very much in the mold of what the modern day linebacker is, the ability to cover in a variety of ways, man and zone, to be able to pattern match, to be able to penetrate and get into the backfield against the pass on the run, be able to blitz a little bit. There's a lot that's asked of him, and he's got the skill set and the brain to be able to handle it. And when it comes to skill set and brain, Eric, we have a lot of good brains and skill sets on this team. And what's cool is we have a lot of shows on the network and a lot of articles and things, but we also have special content that allows you to get more access to the Cover One crew and a variety of coverage with Cover One Pass.
Yeah, One Pass. It's our premium subscription. Obviously, everything that we showed you tonight when it comes to the memberships, to PFF, Sports Info Solutions, any of the stats that you hear Ant rattle off the entire week, it's because of you guys. It's because of our premium subs. The program we just used as a telestrator, Huddle, like we wouldn't be able to afford that if it wasn't for your premium subs. So what that is you're going to have in-depth content, behind a paywall on the website, certain content that is only accessible by insiders. Obviously we have a bunch of that stuff. We have our Slack channel, which is awesome. We talk football all day. There are different channels in there that you can access and talk to people about analytics. I mean, TV shows, cooking, tailgating stuff, like you name it. There are different channels in there, everything. And the football talk, it goes all day. It literally goes all day. So much so it's like, man, I have to put it on mute when I'm at work because it's like I can't get anything done. Like, and that's the cool thing. Like, you have access to all of our contributors in there. So like everyone's in there. All of our employees are in there, and then you can hit them up and ask them questions and stuff like that. So that's a line of communication with our subscriber base. So that's pretty cool. It's $57 for the year. Get to cover1.football to sign up for that. But aside from that, man, we talked about Nickel City being one of our partners this year that we're excited to be a part of. But talk about the other sponsor that we also have on board this year.
Brought BetUS on. The gambling industry and betting industry and sports in general, but especially in football, has really taken off. And we had Underdog Fantasy to start the year, and now we've kind of, positioned ourselves with BetUS in the regular season and moving forward a bit. And in case some people don't know about BetUS, we have a fun informational video from Cover One's own Greg Thompson to let you know what it's all about.
Hey guys, Cover One is excited to announce our new partnership with BetUS. BetUS has a live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business, and an easy deposit and withdrawal process with the fastest payouts in the industry. Our loyal Cover One fans get a choice between two exclusive offers, either a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,500 or a free $50 bet with no deposit required. Just use promo code Cover1 on the links provided in the show description below. BetUS, where the game begins.
So finally developed for the hair game of
Yeah.
Greg Thompson and the beard game now.
He's
really
always
stepped his game
crashing
up.
shows, isn't he? Like just coming in there,
Fish.
cool background, slick hair. You're so cool.
No, look at me. I gelled my hair and I did a promo. It's funny because he'll probably never see this. So we could just make fun of him and he'll have no idea unless somebody tells him. But yes, go check out BetUS. Again, we love the opportunities that these partnerships create for our subscribers and our fan base, especially for an industry like this where every advantage helps or any type of benefit helps. So for the opportunity for you to literally get free playable money and discounts and all these pieces is a tremendous boost for our community and our crowd. You know, we don't take on these sponsorships just to take them on. We do it because we think they're of legitimate value. To all you folks. Oh, an awesome line from Chris. Chris saying that player prop bets article is only available to premium subs. And Chris Seth has
He's
like a
crushing it.
Dude,
He's crushing it. I can't believe, like, I don't gamble, but like I read his articles and help edit and all that. I'm just like, and then he just posts it like when things happen during the games on Sunday. He's like, yep, hit. It's like Battleship, man. Like it's crazy how good he is at this.
The dude he's on his shit and he dives in deep. Yeah, and it's hard to have a success rate like that when it comes to the player prop aspect and betting in general. So again, if you needed any more opportunity to subscribe to Cover One and join that One Pass community, aside from the awesome Slack channel and all the special access and different content that we provide, we can also help you make money in a variety of ways. So if you're in it just for the quick buck, we got you covered in a variety of ways. Eric, this show was tremendous, as we anticipated it would be. We got to dive into some of the pieces on the Bills' offense and defense from a really well-designed and executed game plan on both sides of the ball, especially considering, like we mentioned in the beginning, everything that was going on this past week in terms of moving parts and variables and the concise, concerted effort that the Bills had from a game plan standpoint, execution standpoint, really showed out against the Cleveland Browns. So it was awesome to dive into that tonight. It was a great time, and it wouldn't have been as great of a time if we didn't have all the live viewers and engagement that we had in this episode. So to everyone who joined us live for this episode, thank you so much. It's sad and lonely when no one joins us live, but having people here, it makes us feel better. Like we have this awesome community. So one, thank you for being here. Two, thank you very much for the engagement and questions for us, the follow up with each other and the back and forth. Absolutely tremendous. Three, thank you so much for the super chats we received tonight. They were tremendously generous and we're greatly appreciative. Yes, absolutely tremendous. Thank you so much for that. Four, if you didn't watch this live and you're watching later or listening later on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, thank you for your post live view, your post live listen. Please drop a like on this video if you're watching on YouTube right now or later. We still have over 105 people as we start to wind down. Please drop a like on this video. We hope to have at least 100 likes based on the fact of how many people we've had rocking live with us for this entire episode. Likes are the lifeblood of live streams. That's the reason we shill out for the likes and ask for them, because they go a long way in terms of helping us to get in front of more eyes and out there for more ears. So comment, like, and share. Please rate and review and subscribe on the podcasting apps and platforms. Tell all your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome the show is, how awesome Cover One is. If you thought this show was terrible, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day, because a like's a like, a view's a view, a listen's a listen. We appreciate you folks more than you will ever possibly know. For myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Eric Turner, the godfather of Cover One, this has been another episode of the Cover One Film Room. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well. Take care of one another. Be kind to one another. Have a very happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Make sure you have a day planned out. Yes. Happy Thanksgiving. Have some good food, some good drinks.
My favorite holiday. And the Bills are playing. Forget about it.
I was going to say, make sure. I'm sure everybody has this already in the bag by now, but it's Tuesday. Make sure everyone in your family knows if you have to alter plans. If you're normally a 2:00 Thanksgiving meal family, you got to switch that because the Bills are going to be on. So make sure everybody's prepared. Prep. Be conscious of everything that's going on. We will see you next week for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. Again, for myself, Anthony Prohaska, and Eric Turner, Godspeed. We'll see you next week. And as always, go Bills.